Welcome to this week's episode of Vulnerability Rocks. This week, I am super excited to have April with me from the Vagina Blog. Now, I have heard her speak on her own platform and on another podcast, and I think that this is going to be a really cool conversation. And I also think this would be a really cool conversation for the gals to show the guys, because I definitely learned a few things that I could share with my partner that would definitely help him as well in understanding what we do, what we go through as women and our cycles and all of this stuff. So April is the founder and creator of the Vagina Blog, the Vagina Blog podcast, and also the periodical. And she loves to talk about all things sex, periods, and topics that normally we don't talk about, which, as you know, on the Vulnerability Rocks podcast, that's kind of what I'm all about. So talking about things that people don't really talk about openly that often. So I'm super excited. Welcome, April. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I am, really just kind of waking up, to be honest. So I'm good.
April's on the other side. So it's like 8 a.m. where April is and 8 p.m. where I am. But this is, the wonders of technology, right? We can connect, but we're at opposite ends of the day.
Oh, it's my favorite. Like, how cool is it that we're having this conversation right now?
Super
we're
cool.
on literally opposite ends of the world.
Super cool. Super cool. And P.S., I love your t-shirt.
Thank you. It's from Titty Pics. She does paintings. So you can send her a picture of yourself and she'll paint you. And these are not mine. These are just a t-shirt that she makes. But I love their work. So
amazing. Titty Pics.
Yeah. Titty Pics. Yeah, it's P-I-X.
P-I-X. Okay, there you go. So if you're looking on watching on YouTube, you will see her t-shirt. So go check it out.
I don't quite match my own. It's fine.
So can we start by you telling us a bit about you before we get into what you do? So where are you from? What are you about? Tell us about April.
So currently I'm living in St. George, Utah, which is like gorgeous desert, like stereotypical when you've seen like a Wild West movie in the United States. That's where I live. Big red mesas, cactuses. We love it here. So I grew up in Idaho, which is further north and very cold. So we love being in the desert and where it's warmer, which is fun. I've been married for almost 16 years now. I have 3 kids. And I'm currently in school finishing my master's degree in social work.
Amazing. And what drew you to the work that you do now?
Oh, so I did emergency medicine back when I was my first round of college at 18. And really fell in love with a lot of that. That was my first introduction to the idea of childbirth. And so when I went on to get pregnant and have my own babies, I learned quite a bit about childbirth and how I wanted things to go. And that led to, I really wanted to work as a doula. And there was a nurse midwife that was hiring birth assistants. And because I had an emergency medicine background, I was able to start working for her as an assistant doing home birth and also birth center birth. And then I started taking on my own clients as a doula. And I also worked as a birth photographer because I have a background in photography, video, and design as well. And so one thing led to another. It's funny because once you dive into the birth world, all of a sudden you start learning more about your menstrual cycle because that's a big deal. And the nurse midwife I worked for, she also worked at our Planned Parenthood and does GYN care. So I was learning more and more about birth control and really any and all of the other GYN problems that, people have. And so learning all of this, either on my own or on the job or as I was working with people, I just really became so obsessed with all of this. I wanted everyone to know everything. And after I had my third, I had a particularly horrible pregnancy. And then my daughter, soon after he was born, was diagnosed with type 1, which is kind of a high maintenance disease. And I realized I couldn't get back to birth work. So I was like, what do I do with all of this information? I have all this information that I've studied and learned and I want to share with people. and I just can't go back to the on-call schedule. So what do I do? And that's really how the Vagina Blog was born.
Super cool. And just go back to the birth photography. That must have been a super cool thing to do, right? Tell me,
Birth.
like, for me, I look at that, like, all of it's cool what you've done, but
Yeah.
I love taking photos, and to be able to photograph that part of someone's journey is pretty special.
Oh, it's incredible. I worked as a wedding photographer for a long time, and I've worked doing other types of photography, but birth is one of my absolute favorites because it's very journalistic. You're capturing what's happening. Emotions are so raw. And the difficult part of being a birth photographer, especially with the knowledge that I had, was when people hired me to be the photographer, they usually hired me as their photographer, not as a doula, as a photographer. And so that really lit a fire, because some of the things I witnessed happen to people I was just really disappointed and horrified by it. And so that's been a lot of the fuel for me being like, I have to educate everyone, and we have to fix the things that are happening in our hospital systems. And even, I tell people all the time, it's not just doctors. I've seen midwives pull stuff too that I didn't love. We have to do better.
And tell me about your first blog. So the Vagina Blog was born, and what was your first kind of entry into this space of educating people in this area?
Well, so I had been a women's health consultant for another blog, and had also done a little bit of my own blogging as well, like just with my family blog. So I basically went back through the archives of what has been read, what do people want to know about, where are the biggest questions? And that's kind of where I started. And it's funny because I feel like I put up a whole bunch of blog posts when I first started, and then I haven't really even blogged that much. The website is my most neglected form of media. Like, I'm definitely more on Instagram or, Pinterest and things like this. And so I want to get back to writing more, but we have so much time in a day.
I know there's only so much of us to go around, right? So what would you say is your most passionate point to educate people on in this space?
I want them to feel like they own their own body, so much so that they're in an empowered space to love themselves, to advocate for themselves, and to take good care of themselves. People just don't realize that they are so deserving of pleasure and deserving of understanding their body and working with their cycle. There's so much peace that comes with that. And standing up for themselves, in conversations with healthcare providers, parents, partners, all of it.
I mean, I'm super passionate about advocating for self. For me, most of that experience comes in the mental health kind of arena, as I have bipolar. And when I first got diagnosed, it's like anything, right? When you first get diagnosed, you kind of go to, and don't get me wrong, doctors are amazing. Medical people are incredible, but we kind of go to them like they're going to just grant this little magic wand and be godlike, right? And just go, everything's done. And actually, we know our bodies, and they can only help us as much as we tell them and educate them on us, right? So it really is a two-way conversation. And I learned that the hard way by being given loads of really hardcore medication and being a zombie and all of these things. So advocating for self, like, I'm a massive, I believe in it so much, because it's the difference between being well and being not well. And doctors, we need to educate doctors on us as individuals so they can give us the best advice to move forward, right? So learning to find your voice in that space when they're the professional and you're not, can be intimidating. So I'm loving that you're kind of in this space.
Well, and people love to dive into victim mentality too. It's kind of frustrating because really there's a deficit on both ends. Doctors are not doing enough to educate. They should be spending more time with us and helping walk through some of these things. But at the same time, we have to start owning our own care.
Absolutely.
And we're not doing that enough. I know too many people who I'm like, well, what's your birth plan? And they're like, oh, the hospital is just going to take care of me. expect your doctor to fix all of your problems,
Mm.
but you also can't, like, you have to own some of it and they have to own some of it.
I
And we're
agree.
not doing enough of that.
Yeah.
So,
And it's sort of something that I say in the mental health space, which is make yourself the expert in the room on yourself. Like, go do your research, find out everything you need to know. In when it comes to mental health, something I talk about a lot with people that I mentor, and I'm just like, you learn everything about yourself and then educate them on you. Let them bring the medical expertise to the table, but you bring yourself to the table, right? And
you're going to have so much more useful conversations with your doctor if you're like, okay, so reading about this, what are your thoughts on it? I'm looking into this and this and this. What? Because even my doctor's like, oh, I'm not an expert in nutrition. Here's your nutritionist that I want you to go work with. I'm not an expert in this. He's like, look, my job's to prescribe you medication. That's what I went to school for, was to learn all the different things to prescribe medication for, what medications and how they interact. And he's like, that's my knowledge base. So if you're looking for things outside of that, I can point you in the right direction. And I'm glad you're looking to try and treat things this way, but that's not my job. That's some of that's your job. You have to own that. And I love that he has such a crystal clear relationship with me, and I'm able to trust him more because of it.
Yeah. And I want to talk to you about cycles. So I spent years on the coil, Mirena coil, not having a period, which I loved because it meant I could be in robot mode, and I didn't, to be honest, being a woman was fairly inconvenient to me, if I'm totally truthful. Now I'm going through fertility treatment, and I'm, we're trying to get pregnant again, and I'm now very much in cycle mode. And it can be a little wild, right? So can we talk about that? And can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. So the Mirena is actually kind of cool. Same with the copper. They typically allow you to continue to ovulate. And so you do usually, not always, but usually with the Mirena, you have a cycle, which is kind of cool. You just don't bleed. A lot of people don't realize how contraceptive drugs work, because they really think that if they're on the pill or the patch or the NuvaRing, that they are having a period just like normal. They're not. It's a withdrawal bleed. You're withdrawing from these steroid drugs, right, that you're on, and that withdrawal from the drug is causing you to bleed. Your body's not building up a lining. You're not ovulating, when you're suppressing it. And so we don't go through this cycle when we're on contraceptive drugs like we do if we are, unless you're on the copper IUD or the Mirena IUD. Those do allow you to cycle. So if you're not on any sort of hormonal birth control or contraceptive drugs, I love charting and getting to know your cycle and what your cycle is like. And I also am a huge advocate for making your cycle as easy as possible, because it is inconvenient. To say the very least. It's messy and kind of a pain. And so it's hard because people get this idea that if you aren't talking about it negatively, that you just love it. And that's just, for me anyway, that's not the case. I just have grown to just respect my cycle.
Yes.
I think it's not necessarily that I'm like, yay, I'm bleeding, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
But it's a respect. It's a respect for my body and a respect for what it's doing. And then it's working with that out of respect instead of constantly fighting it or suppressing it. Or, so I had the same thing. I had Mirena IUDs on and off for like 10 years. Didn't have a period that whole time and was braggy about it. And, like, I don't have to deal with all these things.
Me too.
But now, now that I'm cycling, I love how in tune it's put me with my body.
Yes.
There's something inherently feminine about it. Getting into our societies, I feel like have bridged over into really trying to be men. Like that's where we're at. In order to survive in our masculine societies, we're really trying to be men, and suppressing a period comes with that territory. And I'm just ready to argue against it and say, no, let's be feminine. Let's be female. Let's have vaginas. Let's have cycles. Let's cater to those cycles, because it really is. There's so much peace There's so much peace. There's so much health and happiness that comes when you respect your cycle. So do you want me to dive into like the 4 seasons of the cycle?
I really do. Actually, this is the bit I'm
Okay.
so excited about. Please.
So I love using the example of the US women's soccer team, because one day it dawned on them that they should stop training their players like men and start training them like women. So they started charting all their menstrual cycles. They started having them sleep differently where they were on their cycle, eat differently, train differently, and then they won the World Cup.
Wow.
And so they started training them like women.
Okay.
And or like people with vaginas. I'm speaking in very gendered terms, but in general, female bodies, right? They started actually treating their bodies as if they were female and not male, because what a novel idea. Up until like 2010, all athletic teams have been trying to train women like men. We're not dudes. That's not, we need to train differently. So I love that our cycle really matches up with the seasons. Like I love that you can pull nature into your own self and look at it this way. So when we're menstruating, that's in our winter. That is when we hibernate. We want to eat warm foods, typically instinctively, if we really dive into our instincts with that. This is a time of rest. This is a time of renewal. This is a time of intuition. This is a great time to think through your next project. Not do the project, but think through how you want to do it. Moving from our menstrual cycle, we go into our follicular phase, which is our inner spring. And during that time, our energy returns. We typically want to eat lighter foods. We feel lighter, brighter, happier. We're moving out of that hibernation and into our inner spring. This is also a really good time to hit it hard at the gym. You typically have the energy to do so. Your body's well equipped to do it. And so during your follicular phase and then also your ovulation phase, that's when you want to lift heavy. This is when you want to do HIIT workouts. This is when you want to push yourself cardio-wise. These are great times to work out hard. From your follicular phase, we move into ovulation. Ovulation is when we are our brightest, happiest self. Our skin's clear and bright. Our sex drive is up. We have a high libido. We may be really hungry because of that. This is the time to go to parties. This is the time to schedule yourself for public speaking events. This is the time to be on camera like this, right? It's a confident time.
Okay.
It's, this is when we're at our highest confidence. It's our summer. We feel great and shiny and happy. From summer, we move into our luteal phase, which is our inner fall. This is typically the most difficult part of the cycle for most people. The first half of it is usually like, oh, I'm kind of feeling a little bit run down and tired. And then the second half is when we have that hormone crash. So we have all of our progesterone and all of our estrogen dive all at the same time. And that looks a lot like, who even am I? Do I even like my life? Why did I marry this person? What am I even doing with myself? It is an existential crisis month to month, right? We go through our inner mean girl kind of comes out and starts telling us like, you've only made mistakes and we only have regrets. It is a time to re-examine. It's hard. And this is when we're preparing for hibernation too. This is when we need to start taking it easy at the gym. This is when we need to start sleeping a little bit more. This is when we need to start taking a little bit more care of ourselves because we're preparing for winter. This is the time to prepare for winter. Same thing, warm foods tend to be more of a craving during our luteal phase. And this is PMS, PMDD. This is when those types of things show up, but it's because of that hormone crash that we go through. And I love the book. I have it right here. The Period Repair Manual.
Okay.
This is written by Laura Brayden. It's amazing. So if you feel like you have a particularly difficult luteal phase or period, this is the book to read, because she breaks it down and goes, do you have horrible cramps? Here's what you need to take, and here's what you need to do. Do you have PCOS? Do you have endometriosis? Do you have this, like anything? All the different ailments that come with your period, she covers and talks about how to fix them. One thing that I tell people, she advocates a ton for zinc and magnesium. Just those 2 basic supplements, if you just take just those, makes life so much easier. I'm also a big fan of getting away from tampon use. Tampons elongate your period, cause pain, cause damage to your vagina. They're not good for fertility. Like they're overall really bad for you. And it's funny because I have people all the time, they're like, but what about organic tampons? No.
Why? Because they think that there's no, why? Because they think they're toxin free?
They're not.
No. It's just made from organic cotton, right?
Yeah. So that's the saddest part. Like, tampons are bad for you because of how they work, not because of what they're made of. What they're made of certainly doesn't help either.
No.
And the other thing that's frustrating, organic cotton is just as covered in pesticides. It's just organic pesticides. So it doesn't, yeah.
Sorry, guys.
I know. It sucks. I'm constantly the bearer of bad news, but tampon causes micro tearing in the walls of the vagina, which is why you can get toxic shock from tampons, because you have open cuts, right? It can trap endometrial lining in your cervix, which can affect your fertility. They have found, like, I've talked to a couple of fertility doctors who they've told their clients, get away from using tampons, and they've been able to get pregnant after, because they don't have all this rotting lining sitting in their cervix in between periods. Tampons are a plug. We're not supposed to plug. We're supposed to bleed. We're supposed to free flow. We're supposed to. So I'm a big advocate for cups, discs, period panties, and getting away from tampons.
It's an interesting thing that you say about that, because obviously I had the Mirena coil for 18 years, in out. So last time I had to go buy sanitary wear was like, I was 19, 20, and I'm 39 now, right? And I
changed.
Oh my gosh. So when I had my coil taken out a year and a half ago, I had to start fertility treatment. I was in the aisle with my other half, and I was just like, what is all
so many colors?
Yeah. And not only that, you've got pads with wings for strings. Now, they were not a thing 20 years ago, right? And I was looking at Gareth, because our fertility doctor had said, look, just use pads, you just had your coil taken out, And when I was younger, I did only use Tampax. And I was in the aisle with my partner, and he just looked at me and went, I was taking ages. And he was like, Emma, what are you doing? And I was like, I have no idea what to buy. And I even rang my mum. I was like, Mum, I feel like a teenager all over again. I was like, there's wings, there's pads with wings for strings and strings for wings. I said, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. And it was so funny. And he's like, what do you mean you don't know what to buy? I said, I haven't done this for nearly 20 years. I said, I literally feel like I'm starting again. Anyway, tried a cup. For me, I couldn't get on with it. I know lots of people do.
That's okay. Yeah.
And now period pants are like my best friend. I love them.
They're the best.
They are amazing.
Can you imagine having those as a teenager?
Oh,
can you imagine teenagers just getting handed period panties and being like, you just have to wear these during your period? How great is that?
Amazing. Honestly, just no fuss, nothing, no think pads getting stuck to your hands, Tampax, this, that. And then you put a Tampax in and maybe your flow hasn't been enough, so it's dry, and then it's like dragging out like just the worst. It's the worst. It's horrid. And that happened to me a couple of times, like through fertility, like at the beginning, I did use them a couple of times and I was like, this can't be any good for me. And so that's why, I use Modi Body, right? There's loads of different brands, but I love them, and they're not what I expected. So I've had people around me going, oh, don't they smell? Aren't they wet? Don't you sit in it and feel squidgy? I'm like, actually, really, no, completely dry, and don't smell. And I'm like, I'm converted.
Yes. Yeah. Same.
Completely converted.
I can't preach this gospel enough because it's so easy. I'm bleeding. I'm going to put on these underwear.
That's it.
And that's it. Like, it's so nice, but it is. And I feel like even for people who've menstruated this whole time, when they go to switch to a cup, to period panties, all of it, it is like going through puberty again. And it's hard.
Yes.
It's a hard thing because especially we get busy. We have work, we have kids, we have partners, we have spouses, we have all these things going on, right? And the thought of like changing is so hard for people, and I get it. I'm so sympathetic to that. And it's hard to want to try and use a cup for 3 cycles when it didn't work the last cycle. It's like, well, I'm just going to go back to what I know because I don't have time for this crap. Like, I can't right now, And so I'm really sympathetic to that, but I just want to keep planting that seed of like, don't use tampons are bad for you.
And do you know the other thing that's come up when I've shared, because I share on my social media about my period pants, especially where I'm going through fertility treatment, because, you know, when the period comes, like tomorrow, I'm going to go down to the fertility doctor and start my stimulation for egg retrieval, hopefully. So, you know, day one of bleed is a big day for me. It's like party time. It's like, woohoo, we're off again. So, you know, I'm excited about it. But what I also hear is people associate period blood with dirtiness.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, ugh, that's disgusting. And you know what? I was one of those people. So go back before I had my coil taken out, a couple of my friends were using cups. My exact words, I've probably even got text, and they'll probably screenshot it and send it to me after they hear this podcast. They'll be like, Emma, I told you. But basically, I was like, that's disgusting. So now you've got to wash out the cup. Like, Now, where did that come from? This repulsiveness at myself for my own bodily function. Quite strange, but that's where I ended up. And it's a common feedback that period blood is dirty and it's got to be disposed of. So therefore a disposable solution is best, because then we just don't have to deal with it. We don't have to touch it. We can just chuck it in the bin.
Or really know about it, or totally. It's this. Well, I think it's a mixture of things. I think we do have biological instincts that blood is bad.
Yeah.
Because if someone's bleeding that much, typically it's not a good thing.
This is true. This is true.
So I think we are fighting biology a teeny bit there. And then on top of it, we've associated it with, and that's just our society, we've associated with like dirtiness, grossness, ew. And I'm like, it's coming from your body. Like, do I want boogers on my hands when I blow my nose? No. But am I going to completely freak out? No, you just go wash your hands. It's really the same thing. It's, you know, if you end up getting blood on your hands, you just wash your hands, just like any other tears coming out of my eyes, you know, things like this is just another fluid from your body that you're producing for a reason. And it doesn't need to be super gross. Like I have a lot of friends that use cups and they use their blood to water their plants because it's so good for plants.
That's amazing.
Oh, it's the coolest. I use undies usually. I use period panties. And so I don't usually collect with a cup. But when I do, you just go take it, top it off with water, and you can go add it to your plants.
There you go, people.
Yeah.
You heard it here.
I haven't gone as far. I know people who do like period blood facials and stuff. And I'm like, I can't. I just can't. I don't know. But I support them in that. Good for them for embracing that in themselves, you know?
Well, and the thing is, it's taken me a while to break this down for myself, this self-repulsiveness to my own period blood. It has been a bit of a journey for me since I had my cord taken out, going from oh god, totally inconvenient to, do you know what, actually I'm bleeding, and I suppose perhaps because I'm in that mode of trying for a family, I'm seeing it as a value. I'm seeing the value in a cycle. I'm seeing the value in bleeding. I'm seeing the value in what a cycle and a bleed can hopefully, possibly create life. And I think when you're younger and that's not on your radar, it's harder to see the value in that, perhaps. And maybe just from my perspective anyway, it was definitely just not something I would have seen value in. I just saw inconvenience in it, right? So you just blindly do these things, take these things without questioning how good it is for you. Because it's just convenient, disposable, throwaway, easy, clean, tidy, da-da-da-da-da.
And that's kind of how we're taught too.
Yeah.
So the thing that I'm excited about is conversations like this, because you and I are going to raise our kids differently, and we're going to tell all of our friends everything that we've learned, and we're going to do better, because it's this conversation that I want 12-year-olds to start to hear and 14-year-olds to hear. I want them to feel empowered. You know, when we look at kids as they go through puberty, it is a train wreck for girls. Boys are so excited. I'm going to get bigger. I'm going to get hairier. My balls are going to get huge. Everything about this is fantastic. I love it. I'm going to be a man. They are so excited going through puberty. Like, yes, there's some awkward stuff, but for the most part, it's exciting. For girls, You're going to bleed and it's super gross. So cover it up and make sure no one knows. You're going to get hair, shave it off. You're going to stink, get rid of the smell. You're going to get boobs, but don't show anybody. They're shameful. Cover up.
Gosh,
What are we doing?
yes.
That's the message that we get at 12 as we go through maturation and learn about puberty. We have to change this conversation.
Yeah.
We need to tell our girls, you don't have to shave. You can do whatever you want. You know what periods are good for? And we're going to tell them. We're going to tell them about winter and spring and summer and the superpowers that come with it. We're going to empower them with easy ways to manage their periods so that they're embracing the fact that they're menstruating while also not feeling so like powerless with it. Yeah. We're going to teach them better.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing that I really am excited about, you know, if God, please grant me some luck with having a family, but is if I was to be the mother of boys, to educate them the same. I mean by that is in terms of information. Obviously, not educating them, this is going to happen to your body, right? But this is what happens to uterus owners. This is what happens to penis owners. This is what happens. And regardless, like, because and this is what we do, and this is why people show up the way they do. And, you know, so for me, it's super important because every time we do that, it eradicates some more shame, right? Which,
amen.
It just lifts it for people, for everyone.
One of my favorite conversations I had was one of the first podcasts I was on. It's the Birds and Bees podcast. He is fantastic. I just love him. His mom told him all about periods at a young age. And then this is what I adore. She said, if you ever notice a stain on the back of a girl's pants, or that someone's trying to be private or secretive about tampons or pads or any of that type of stuff, she's like, A, you never, ever crack jokes or bring attention to that. And secondly, if you witness someone like bleeding through their pants, you go and tell a teacher. You don't talk to her. You go tell the teacher and you take care of it. And he's like, and 1 week later, a girl stood up in front of me and had a big stain on the back of her pants. And I proudly walked up, told the teacher. She was able to like get a jacket to wrap around her short or like her pants, got her out of the classroom. And like, he was so proud of himself as like a young teen because he'd helped this girl. And how incredible is his mother for thinking to teach him that?
Amazing.
And empowering him in that way. And also just to have this sympathy for the opposite sex, because I think we can do this too. You know, boys go through everything from nocturnal emissions, where they're having wet dreams, to, you know, erections for no reason whatsoever. It would be so nice if we can look at each other with empathy and understanding, because we have the education to do that. And if we don't educate them, they don't know. And so it's really important for us to talk to our kids and our teenagers all the way through about all these changes that are happening for both genders.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, and even like I can remember being young and cracking jokes about boys' voices breaking. That was like the equivalent the other way around, right? You know, if a boy's voice is in the middle of breaking, the girls wouldn't have thought twice about mimicking that and mocking that. So it definitely has to go both ways. Because it has to go both ways, because actually, you know, whether you identify as a boy or a girl, everyone's got emotions, and everyone's emotions need to be heard and looked after. And it starts with our young people.
Exactly. And I think too, providing that education also helps those that are confused and working through and figuring out where they do end up on that spectrum of male, female too. But I think this education also extends to helping out, you know, people who are going through deciding if, you know, non-binary is where they land. And so it helps everybody.
Yeah, it really does. So where can our listeners find you and find some more information? And because I know you do so much, and you've got so much content that can help people understand their seasons, their cycles. Tell us where we can find you.
So I pretty much live on Instagram. I feel like for engagement, like for people to engage with me, that's definitely where I live, is Instagram. I also have one season of the podcast out on the Vagina Blog podcast, which can be found on any of the podcast platforms. I'm really hoping to come back for a second season. I've got to get my life in order. And then I'm working on, I have the periodical, which is a monthly newsletter, and you can sign up for that on my Instagram profile. And my Pinterest page is super fun. There's all sorts of fun links and things on there as well. So, and all that's just at the Vagina Blog.
Amazing. And I've also seen that there is you did a podcast with my friend Ashlyn, and she has one of your guides inside on like how to look after yourself through the seasons, right? So this can all be found on April's page, the Vagina Blog. There are links through her bio. Go follow her, go tune into her content. There's a wonderful raw realness to this lady, and I just want you to go and experience what she shares, because it's really cool, and share it with boys, share it with girls, right? Because we have to start educating, because otherwise this cycle just continues, right?
Yep. I'm excited to break the cycle. I can't wait to see what this next generation is because of it.
Yeah. Thank you
so much for having
me. Thank you for getting up early. Thank you for getting up early. I'm so grateful.
Anytime.